Hi, everyone. It's Allie from Heart and Soul Connected, and welcome to my channel once again. Today, I'm going to do another little humanities video on the French Revolution's secret salonierres and let you know a little bit about them. If you had the chance to see my past life regression that I had done probably earlier in the year on Dave Johnson's channel, you'll know that I myself was a salonniere during the French Revolutionary days and hosted people such as Ben Franklin and Tom Jefferson and others. Women had a bigger role than many people ever could imagine. So the key here is that why haven't you ever heard of these people if you haven't? And that might be because they don't really teach about it unless you are in a master's program, probably. I know that's where I was able to learn a little bit about it. And I was just mesmerized by the information I learned in intellectual history or social history and how everybody lived during a period of time. That always fascinated me more than this guy was the king, this person had a war, that one went there, and this one went here. Yeah, interesting, but not my cup of tea compared to how did they live? What did they dress? What did they eat? How did they, whatever. So this one here is a fabulous one because it combines politics, passion, and power and how they all collide together in this wonderful way. So what you should know is that the hidden world of salonierres and their significance was vital. And what they did was the men did not host them, but the men went to them. And the men ate there, drank there, and spoke there. The lady merely hosted it for them in their house. And, depending on who it was, and there were a number of them, depending on who it was, they either ate or sat around and they talked about things and they wrote things philosophically and politically. And a woman would host it, however, usually was also her husband was present. But he never usually, he may not have said anything. He may have just, it's okay if she does this, it's okay. But the woman was not allowed to say anything, minus, a few things like, can I get you something? That kind of thing. But she was in charge in a way. And it was the beginning of these things. And this would have been in the 18th century, somewhere between, say, 1779 to 1799, somewhere in there. Okay, so I wanted to give you the flavor. And that was the time of the French Revolution and the American Revolution. So things were happening. Things were happening on this planet. And these ladies made these salons available to wonderfully intelligent and articulate men in order for them to understand what was going on and have conversations during that time. So it wasn't just dramatic speeches, bloody battles. It also were these gatherings, and they brought in revolutionary ideas, but they were often overlooked by historical accounts. The omission leaves us puzzled. Why did these inconspicuous meetings influence one of history's most pivotal moments, which was the French Enlightenment? To be enlightened has lots of different meanings. We look at it in a spiritual sense. The Buddha talked about being enlightened, but you can also have enlightened thinking. You can have enlightened ideas when it comes to, you could also be woke. How about that? That's kind of like being enlightened. It's being aware and understanding those things that you need to know in order to live in a society. And while you may or may not be interested in some of the dirt that's slung and all that other stuff, it's so important to know why these things were done. Okay. So the challenge here lies in the context of these salons. Who were the people behind them and what made the meetings so impactful? Well, it is the people, absolutely. So the moral and intellectual landscape of 18th century France was in full swing, and we had thinkers like Rousseau, J.J. Rousseau, we had Voltaire, we had Montesquieu, we also had Denis Diderot, and we had people that traveled over to France as well, such as Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and others. And when over there, they would go to these salons. They disseminated radical ideas about liberty, equality, and democracy. Because remember, both here and in the United States, kings were running the countries. And in the case of France, of course, Louis XVI, and we had King, can't think of his name now, and everybody's going to say, "Oh, come on." Anyway, we were being ruled by the king in England at the time before we broke away in the Revolutionary War. So you have to think about all these things and how those things developed, because things just don't happen in the drop of a hat. And I think we're feeling right now that TikTok but things in government and things in new ideas can go rather slowly until they reach a tipping point. And once that tipping point is met, that paradigm shift will happen. And that's exactly what happened here with these salons. So delving deeper, we find that they're not casual get-togethers. They were structured discussions led by the influential women of the day, and they were known as salonierres. These women, often from aristocracy or wealthy backgrounds, had the social standing to host these, okay? You're not going to find a woman who lives and begs in the street having one of these. I mean, this person had to have social standing and the ability to host at her particular home and do it in such a way that people could come and join and have a full evening of spending time doing this. The salons were spaces where these philosophers, writers, politicians, they could debate and discuss progressive ideas, not necessarily with any kind of negativity or nastiness, not like our modern day, even though I'm sure that some of them could have had that. The conversations did run between literature and art to politics and philosophy. And it was here that ideas about constitutional monarchy and the abolition of that monarchy began to take shape. The Salonierres facilitated these discussions, ensuring they remained focused and productive. So while I said the woman would say something, she might just say, "Okay, it's time for you to speak," or we've already discussed this. We need to talk about this now. So she was in charge, but she was not giving her own opinion about anything. That was not allowed. The impact was profound. They acted as incubators for revolutionary thought, where attendees could refine their ideas and gain confidence in them and let their beliefs be known so that they could tell others about them, so they could sort of manufacture those belief systems, come to agreement on them, and maybe write about them that could be disseminated to other people at the time. The Salonierres were there playing that pivotal role in connecting intellectuals with activists and creating a network that would be crucial in the years to come. So you've got these people talking, and then the salonier might say afterwards, "I would like to connect you to this person over here, this activist." And as you know, I brought up Charlotte Corday and what she did to Marat at the time. And so there's probably some of that going on, although Charlotte was an aristocrat. But remember, women didn't do that thing. So she was very odd. And so as the French Revolution gained momentum, the ideas discussed began to manifest on the streets of Paris. In the rise of radical factions like the Jacobins were influenced by the debates and discussions that had been taking place in the salons. Rising action. And it usually does start in this way. It reminds me of the French resistance during World War II. They didn't have salons, but they had information that was passed along to the activists who would do the work. So this is not a new concept in World War II times. And I'm not quite sure if it was a new concept during late 1700s in France or not, but it did catch on rather quickly. And you can see that all of these people, whether philosophical or political writers, did do some writing, very important, and wrote letters to each other. So the Salonierres and their gatherings were instrumental in radicalizing the population and organizing the protests that characterized the revolution. Their influence peaked during the Reign of Terror, where the rhetoric and the ideologies forged in the salons directly influenced the revolutionaries' actions. So it's clear there were more than just social gatherings. It's clear that they eventually changed things. It's clear that it takes a village here. But these women dedicated their time and efforts, and there were a number of them. One of them's name was Madame Geoffrin, Geoffrin, and she was one of the salonists. There were so many. But really instrumental also in bringing together great ideas in a very congested area, but also being able to disseminate that out to the rest of the revolution that was occurring. Thank you. Again, on PBS Masterpiece Theater, and depending on when you're watching this, there's a fantastic, there's actually 2 seasons of Marie Antoinette, really recently done. And it's really worth it. You get the flavor of what's going on. You get the flavor of what's happening in the palace, and you get the flavor of the intrigue outside. It doesn't show us a Salonierres right now, but you can be sure they were happening at the time. So thank you. Have a wonderful day.